You know, I think there is a sign there from yesterday for all the people in the acts of resistance, which was, yesterday Donald Trump said, the United States said to Hezbollah, if you want to avoid Israel attacking Dahia, then you stop attacking Israel in the southern part of Lebanon. It was unbelievable, this argument. And it seems that they're occupying your territory. You have to stop attacking them, or they're going to attack some other parts of your country. Then we see Iran coming in and changing the whole thing. And this is is this going to be the attitude of the acts of resistance as time goes by? Because we know if you back down, as we've seen, you've mentioned the case of Gaza. The case of Gaza is a clear example of what has happened so far. Because they destroyed everything. They're killing people in Gaza, in the West Bank, each and every day. And Iran doesn't want that for Lebanon. Is that the case? And how is that going to be manageable on the part of the acts of resistance?
Well, Iran doesn't want it for Gaza or for Lebanon equally. But again, the regional regimes, in my opinion, treacherously assisted Trump in imposing a ceasefire on Gaza, which is not a ceasefire. And right now we see that the Israeli regime is not only murdering people, but they're taking more territory, and they want to even go further. They're even now Netanyahu wants to push for 70% of Gaza. All of this is a violation, but you're not going to see it in the New York Times or the Guardian or the Washington Post or anywhere like that. So Iran's options in Gaza are more limited, just finding a way to stop the slaughter of children, women and children, and the innocent. They're all innocent, but you get what I'm saying. And then in Lebanon, the Iranians are saying that the Israeli regime must leave Lebanon. And we must go to a point where the Israeli regime is not occupying any part of Lebanon, and the Israeli regime cannot carry out operations inside Lebanon and start assassinating people again. That's not acceptable. With regards to reconstructing Lebanon, Iran have no doubt, Nima. Through reparations, the Iranian will take that money, and they will help rebuild every building in southern Lebanon, even though the Lebanese government doesn't want this. The Lebanese government is preventing Iran from sending aid to help people, the refugees. The Lebanese government is utterly sinister, utterly evil. They're helping the Americans in these regimes, these Arab dictatorships in the Persian Gulf, to corner the resistance supporters. They're a part of this, and they're blocking any aid from coming in from Iran or Iraq. They want to crush the people of the resistance. They're the enemies of Lebanese sovereignty. And they are also trying to push for a ceasefire where the Israelis are still in Lebanon. But Hezbollah will not accept. Lebanon's sovereignty has to be restored. The Israeli regime must leave. And the Iranians, through the reparations that they get, they will rebuild both Iran and all of those areas destroyed in Lebanon. Every single building, every single home will be rebuilt.
What's funny, yesterday the government in Lebanon said that we have done a lot of talks with the Americans to bring some sort of, it's just amazing. What?
They're puppets. The prime minister and the president, they're just puppets.
Yeah. When it comes to the Professor Marandi, to the negotiations between Iran and the United States, what can we learn about that? And how, because Donald Trump yesterday tweeted that the talks are going well between Iran and the United States. The other point that he mentioned yesterday, he said he called Benjamin Netanyahu and Hezbollah. I don't know who was talking with him on the part of Hezbollah. He was talking with Iran and he said Hezbollah.
Of course, he wasn't speaking with anyone in Hezbollah. But I mean, that's Trump. Well, no one should take anything that he says seriously. The Iranians stopped the negotiations. Why? Because that would be added pressure. Again, going back to what I said earlier, Iran does not want the global economy to crash. Whoever thinks that is wrong, even if they support it, because a lot of people want Iran to crash the global economy, and they're willing to make the personal sacrifices so that the resistance would be able to defeat it. I understand that, but it's not the right path, because the crashing of the global economy will create starvation, it'll create global misery. Iran does not want that. So Iran declared yesterday that the talks have stopped. Now that Trump has made that statement, basically forcing the Israelis to stop, and of course, no one trusts Trump and no one trusts the Israeli regime. We may, after this show, hear that the Israelis are bombing Dahia. And if they do, then Iran will strike Israel swiftly. So we don't know. But at this point, the position now is that Trump will not allow Netanyahu to strike civilian targets in Beirut. So I would assume that the messaging going back and forth will continue again. Because after all, the Americans took that, they took that. I don't know the details. I have not spoken to anyone, but I'm imagining that since this has happened, that the messaging will go back and forth. Because remember, some believe that an agreement is impossible. I don't discount that at all. Some believe that it is possible. I don't know. But if Iran can get a good deal for Gaza, for Lebanon, for the region, for Iran, then they should pursue it. But it should be a deal. It can only be a deal where the other side carries out its obligations first, and then the Iranians would reciprocate. And of course, the Iranians have one important tool in their toolbox, and that is the Strait of Hormuz. So what Iran wants is an end to the genocide. It's not really asking for much, or let's say demanding much. Iran says, end the genocide. And the West says, no, well, let them continue with the genocide. And why don't we just do a deal with you? No, end the genocide, end the siege, hand over Iran's assets. The Strait of Hormuz is Iranian and Omani territorial water. And we will get our reparations through our territorial water that is being used. If you don't like it, you shouldn't have started the war. And in addition to that, Iran will not allow the Persian Gulf to ever again be used as a military base to carry out attacks on Iran or Yemen, as they did before. All these regimes helped the Saudis and the Americans in Yemen, all of them. Qatar too. Only later on, when Qatar went under siege, then Qatar and Turkey split from the Saudis and the Emiratis in their genocidal attack on Qatar, on Yemen. But the American war on Yemen was also carried out with the help of these regimes, and Qatar and their base, the CENTCOM, and so on. In Syria, in Iraq, the invasion of Iraq. The only country in the region to oppose the invasion of Iraq was Iran. And Iran, of course, when the US went in, Iran began its infiltration, just like in Afghanistan. But in any case, Iran is not going to allow the Persian Gulf to be a military zone for the Americans to use against countries across the region anymore. These are not crazy demands. But for the empire, what would be sane to all of us is just insane to them. Now, how could anyone demand justice? We give what we want, we take what we want.
I think what we're witnessing right now is the new face of the West Asia by defining practically, because before, you remember, during JCPOA, Iran was seeking some sort of guarantees on the part of UN Security Council or other councils within UN. Right now, they can have, with the ongoing negotiations, I would argue that maybe some, we have we can have some sort of talks in terms of what UN can do. Other countries like China, like Russia, and other important countries can do. Pakistan, regional countries can do to bring some sort of sanity to what's going on between Iran and the United States. But what is important is practical. One is the Strait of Hormuz, to guarantee that the deal is going on and is working for both sides. And the other one is this Bab al-Mandab, because yesterday we've learned from Yemenis, they said if something goes wrong in Lebanon, they're going to close this Bab al-Mandab. And the head of the Iranian IRGC Quds Force, Brigadier General Ismail Ghani, he said the same thing, that Bab al-Mandab is still there and we can just close Bab al-Mandab as well. These are two important choke points in the hand of the acts of resistance. And these are guarantees for any sort of deal between the acts of resistance and the United States. What is your...
Exactly.
Go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. As we discussed earlier, the Iranians and their allies in the Axis, they have not gone very far up the escalation ladder for humanitarian reasons. I mean, remember, and if we have war, though, this time around, it'll be, as I said, it'll escalate very fast based on what the Zionists and the Americans are saying, destroying all of Iran's critical infrastructure. And so Iran doesn't want that to happen. Just like, so, for example, when I've warned people in these regimes, in Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, Qatar, Bahrain, and Kuwait, to leave when these threats were being made, or when we're on the verge of we seem to be on the verge of war, is because I don't want people to get killed. But if they destroy Iran's critical infrastructure from using these regimes, using these countries, then Iran will retaliate. Why did Iran strike Qatar's gas installations? Because our gas installations were targeted. It's deterrence. If Iran doesn't do it, they'll destroy everything. They won't relent. They have no humanity, the Epstein class. They have zero humanity. They started the war with murdering 168 little girls, and the Western media was indifferent about it. Human rights organizations, they're all funded by the Epstein class. All of these where do you think the Western human rights organizations get their money? Where do you think these feminist organizations, all these NGOs, where do they get their money? Do they get it from like workers and working in factories in Ohio, or farmers in I don't know, in Northern Europe? Of course not. They get them from these powerful NGOs. They're all wittingly or otherwise, unwittingly working they're working, I don't want to say they're all agents, but in general, they're working in the interests, their organizations work for the interests of the empire. So Iran does not want. So this time around, if there is war, there will be swift. And look at what happened. They murdered almost 3,500 Iranians. How many Arabs and workers in the Persian Gulf died in this war? Not even 20. Why? Because Iran was careful not to kill civilians, even though these countries were deeply involved. And so my warnings were also basically to say, get out of there. If there's war and the infrastructure is destroyed, the oil and gas facilities, the electricity, and all that, it'll be unlivable. So leave, so you don't get hurt. No one here wants people to get hurt. We don't want the war. So Iran did not go up the escalation ladder. But next time, based on Trump's own threats to wipe out a civilization. Again, no one protests in the West about this. No, I mean, I'm not talking about ordinary people. I'm talking about the media, the NGOs, the ruling class. Wipe out Iran's civilization, obliterate Iran, send Iran back to the Stone Age. Based on those threats, next time around, the move up the escalation ladder will be very swift. What does that mean? That will mean no more oil and gas from our region, of course. Right now, you know that like 25 to 30 ships go through the Strait of Hormuz every day. Countries that are friendly to Iran, or at least didn't take part in the war against Iran, they can use the strait. Bab al-Mandab will be closed. Iraq, the resistance will rise up. It'll be a completely different situation. It will be catastrophic for the world. And we can do it now. But we do not want the global economy to be wrecked. We want an end to the genocide in West Asia. And we want life to go on for ordinary people across the globe and the region as normal.